obviously I'm beyond just that, but
yes.
it's the point of like realizing that there's a calculator on your phone. You don't need to buy a calculator. Like old people would still go buy a calculator, right? They don't even realize that shit's on their phone.
Yeah, and like I'm sure we'll get there soon. The main reason I bring it up is that like technology is no longer being made for us, right? Like our generation, like technology is being made for Gen Z now or younger. Like,
well, here's the thing. Here's where you get like too wrapped up in thinking that you're older than you are because you're no, hold on. Let me say what I'm about to say. Your age group, in the demographic sales standpoint, 25 to 35 is when people spend the most money. So you actually are only 2 years in to the time point that people are like trying to sell everything to. So like you may be right in like feeling, yes, you're getting closer to 30, but you are literally like smack dab in like you are who people are trying to sell shit to. You're just not the same as everybody else that's 27.
Yeah, no, you have a fair point there. And maybe I am just inept to a certain degree. Definitely, what I was trying to get at back before is that my only point was new things are not necessarily being designed for like an older audience. Like I feel like we're on the precipice now of like things are not being designed for us anymore. They're being designed for a younger generation. And I know I'm not that old, but all the same, I do still feel like out of the loop because I don't get it. Like I already don't get it. And that's frightening that technology moves that fast. Like I don't want to be 27 and have things being made that's like, no, you're too old to get this. Like, no, fuck. Like that's a little bit much to take in.
I mean, like, think about it this way. The radio was made in like what? Like the commercial radio was made in like 1925 or some shit like that. Like, I don't know the exact year. I'm not trying to like pretend like I actually know that. But it wasn't like till the 1920s, 1930s that people had radios in their home. And then in the 1950s, people had television. The 1960s, they had color television. You know what I'm saying? Like things, I think, always move this rapidly. It's just that we've never personally experienced it ourselves. So like it suddenly then happens to us. We're like, holy shit, I wasn't ready for that. You know, because like we haven't been there before. So like I actually made this point on Facebook earlier tonight. I was talking about currency in some way, and there was an agreement, and I don't want to get in the whole thing. I just want to say that what I was talking about is the period between 1944 and 1971. And I like thought to myself, why does the distance between 1944 and 1971 seem so much greater than the distance between 2021 and 1994? Because it's the same fucking time, but it feels like 1994. Well, that was the year you were born, I guess, right? Or you were born 95 or 94?
93.
Or 93. Right. Yeah, you're turning. Yeah, okay, right. Anyways, that feels like yesterday, even though I will say this, if I actually think about what I was doing in 1995 when I was 10 years old, that feels like 1,000 years ago. But for some reason, the idea of 1994, 1995, that feels like yesterday to me. But you think 1994 or 1944, that was nothing like 1971. Like nothing like 71.
Not even a little, no.
I don't exactly, I didn't wrap up my point cleanly there, but
it is an interesting comparison because I feel like the main differences in splitting up those two time periods are like socially things changed very much in that time period between the 40s and the 70s. That was a very like constructive time, albeit a very hard time for equal rights and stuff like that. Now,
hasn't it been now though?
It has, but in different ways. Like it's been with LGBT rights and stuff like that. But I would say the major component, like if you had to like pin the tail on the donkey of what the major like progress has been in the past 20 years, it would be technology. It's nothing like I remember in 2010 thinking that like what is the point of a touch screen, or what is the point of an app? Like why would anyone want this? Like you could just easily type in the URL to in your internet browser. Why would anyone want an app? And like I thinking back on that, I'm like, wow, like now it's just so mechanic, like muscle memory of just like tapping on an app to open something. But back then I was like, well, that'll never be a thing. Like, who cares about that? And that really is the major cultural difference, is that, I mean, you got kids now. I shouldn't call them kids. You got, people who are technically adults now, 18 years old, who have never lived without a smartphone their entire life. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to, sound old myself, but like that was like a really weird thing that just became normal at one point in our lives. And to so many younger people, it's always been a thing. And that freaks me out to think like, so what will be the next thing? Because technology is moving so fast, what will be the next thing that really like blows our minds that people like you and I will just not be able to wrap our heads around?
Well, I think you bring up like a lot of interesting points there, and I think one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking there is, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this, but so you obviously were at the age where you could basically make the choice to think about the shit that people my age kind of had to use. So it's like you're into cassette tapes, right? Like, but you could have had a computer, or you could have had like a cassette recorder. Like those two things, obviously, like money makes it. Like for me, the only thing when I was coming up, like that I could make music on and could like attain myself was a cassette recorder.
Right.
So I like the point I'm trying to get at here is that like this is where you have a really unique outlook. Like people look at millennials, and millennials' unique outlook is that we're the last people who actually learned on those devices. We're the last people who actually, you know what I mean? Like when we started school, that was like how things were. And that's what kind of like gives us a little bit of an outlook to the prior world. And then you fall in this unique spot where both things were available, but you fell into like kind of, I think, valuing maybe not the nostalgia, but the, could I say, uniqueness of yes, like analog recording and things like that. And I guess Jack White was, and all that shit was big.
Well, I would actually say it was more, you're not wrong that I did gravitate towards those things, but it also wasn't so much until I was like in my, later teens, 16 to, whatever, that I actually had the availability to use like more modern technology just because of like financial reasons.
Yeah, I guess like don't get too hung up on like your personal story here. What I'm trying to like get at is that you're in this group where both things were there and both things were available, maybe financially or not, but like both things. And there's people around your age who went really into the lo-fi, and obviously like Jack White, very lo-fi fucking, like he promoted that shit like in that day and age as well, like that was a pretty big fucking deal. But then also electronica and shit like dubstep. kind of veered off. There was like a forking of music at that time of like people going towards technology and people going towards like the way we used to do it, you know? And all I'm trying to make the point is that like for people who went lo-fi, even though you're young, I can see where that like divergence happened, because as I look at music today, I mean, it's so far beyond like what I ever even imagined like 10 years ago.
You bring up a good point, because it really was that way. It really was like two different worlds of people.
Yeah.
Especially if you were making music as I was, and I know as you were, but you know, you had already set into doing what you were doing.
I'm always doing what I'm doing, baby.
Aren't we all? But I definitely did set into that.
I don't know why I'm saying baby today. I feel like I'm like a LA hot shot tonight. Yeah, baby. Yeah, come on. All right. I just had to call myself out on that stupid shit. But anyways, go ahead.
But yeah, I definitely did. I never really thought about it, but I did gravitate towards that side of things, because you had to kind of live in that time period to understand how much of a divergence there was of like people sticking to making traditional music on, and those people tended to go towards like cassette or I mean CD too was like a thing you might be able to do.
That's because it's easy on your computer, like more than anything. Yeah.
Or like make like when dubstep and like a lot of the electronica music came out. And I shouldn't say all electronica, because like synth music existed for a long time, but that, you know, to make synth music back in the day or any electronica, you needed to have like a few $1,000 setup to do so.
And they still had a band usually like behind them as well, you know?
Yeah. And when it first became a thing where people could make music using just a computer, and that was it, there was this divergence of people who held on to what was already established and people who went on to like the new thing. And I definitely stayed behind, and it kind of caused a rift a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think something that's interesting, and I'm not going to pretend like I've ever had this thought before until 30 seconds ago when you just said what you'd said. There's something very interesting about how the electronic music group has this idea of family amongst the crowds, right? Like that's even like, I'm pretty sure that's where like the term fam came from, or at least it got co-opted from like the black community. So everything white people say got co-opted, right? So I'm pretty sure fam probably got co-opted, but like, I know I first heard it in the fucking like EDM community, you know, fam, and it's all about like, yeah, we're just listening to music, we're just chilling, taking drugs, you know, hanging out. It's all about polyamorous love. Everybody's just loving each other, all this bullshit. It's all bullshit, you know. But
energy.
Yeah, but that's where I was kind of like first exposed to that. And what I find interesting though is the artists are very inward. And it's a solo thing. It's not a band. It's a one person like show, and they're up there and maybe they're trying to like progress the crowd around like along feeling good. But the person making the music in this new instance is very much introverted, and the crowd is very extroverted. Whereas like in a rock and roll scenario, you have a band that's very extroverted, like almost performing to introverts. You know, it's like it's almost flipped that way. Similarly.
Yeah, definitely. You put it very well. I don't have a whole lot to add to that, but
I don't even know where it came from. I don't have a point. I don't know what it means, but there's something to it.
You do make a very good point. Because you're absolutely right. People who are just a one person, you know, back in the day, you'd call them a one-man band. But if they're not playing instruments. It doesn't really apply, but yeah, I guess you call him like a DJ or something.
Something like that.
I just made myself sound so old by saying like, I guess you call him a DJ, maybe.